Welcome to Enlightened Wealth Strategies, the podcast where insight and knowledge meet opportunity. Please join us as we navigate the world of finance, discovering actionable strategies to help you achieve your personal financial goals.
With decades of combined experience, we're here to shed light on the topics that matter most to your financial well-being. Whether you're accumulating, preserving, or distributing your wealth, this is the place for you.
Now let's dive in and start your journey to financial enlightenment.
Welcome, James.
Hello, Jim. How the hell are you?
We're doing good. Welcome to Enlightened Wealth Strategies.
Yes.
We have a guest today here
We
in
do.
the place with us.
We have Peter Nagy with us, and he is with The Credit Pros. And the topic is we're going to discuss today, Jim, is credit scores and more.
Oh,
You
boy.
like that title?
I do.
I thought of it all by myself. So, Peter, welcome.
Guys, thanks for having me, Jim. I'm looking forward to this experience. I've never done a podcast before, but I'm ready to go.
Yeah, all right. That's
I appreciate the invite.
Just breathe. Relax. Breathe. We don't know what we're doing anyway, so.
Okay, got it.
He doesn't. I only know a little.
Okay.
So anyway, we're glad that you're here because this is an important topic that a lot of people encounter. As you know, you and I have known each other for some years now, and I have brought some people to you
Yes,
along
you
the
have.
way.
Yeah.
And we've actually helped them. And, oftentimes we think, Jim and I are working with more affluent clients, but even they can get into trouble from time to time. Could be any number of reasons. They could wind up with a failed business. They could wind up in a lawsuit. They could wind up with medical issues that cost a lot of money. And then all of a sudden, they had to charge all this on their credit cards, right?
I call these things hardships, right? A divorce, a loss of job, a sickness. So bad credit, unfortunately, happens to good people all the time. It doesn't discriminate. So if you've been victimized by one of those three hardships I just mentioned, chances are your credit's going to go south on you.
And yes, it's non-discriminatory on all socioeconomic levels is basically what you just said.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So with that, let's talk a little bit about credit and credit scores because it is I would say it's confusing for the average consumer or individual out there.
Very confusing.
I mean, I find it to be confusing because you and I have had these conversations where you've said to me, James, you have a credit card, keep it. And I have many times said, I don't want it anymore, and I've gotten rid of it. And I don't want to address that right out of the box, but I do want to bring it up because it is important just to know that. So maybe we could start with the first question is, what is a credit score? What comprises it? Unless you have something.
This is actually a very good topic because my boys were asking me this question themselves, and they said, Dad, do a podcast of this. So this is timely.
This very timely, yeah, absolutely.
They're trying to build up their credits. They're 26 and 28, and they're thinking about buying a house, and they want to know how to improve their scores.
Very important.
My youngest is at 750, and the oldest doesn't know what his credit score is. But
most people don't.
Most people
really.
don't.
They don't know until they need to get something, and then they can't
until they get denied.
Yes,
that's when there's a reality check.
Right.
But it's a great question. What is a credit score? Because people have an idea, but they really don't know what it is.
It's like correct me if I'm wrong. I don't mean to steal any thunder, but it's almost like you got to look at a pie chart.
Yes, in a way. So a credit score is a 3-digit number, anywhere from a low of 300 all the way to 850. Okay, and that represents basically how you manage your finances and pay your bills. And lenders look at that number to assess risk. People with lower credit scores are either going to get denied financing or they're going to be charged higher rates and higher fees. The main two things about a credit score are, your payment history is very important. All right. And people don't pay attention to that as much as they should, because the penalty of missing a payment is very severe for the crime. You could be assessed a 100-point hit on your credit score if you have one late payment on a credit card, on a car loan, on a mortgage. Doesn't matter.
Even the store cards.
Even the store cards.
Yeah,
One ding can, cost you as many as 100 points. So it's a very, serious, thing that can occur if you're not paying attention.
And oftentimes people fail to do it, not because they
deliberately do it.
Yeah, it's just they're overwhelmed, and you miss a payment, and you forget, or you send the payment in, or you do it online. It's more commonly people doing it online, but they do it 2 days later.
Yeah, or the last possible day. But if your payment isn't processed on the day that you call it in, let's say it's your mortgage, and they don't process that payment until maybe the first day of the month, you're going to be assessed that 30-day late, and it's going to absolutely destroy your credit.
Yeah.
So
it's up to 100 points.
Up to 100. And
It doesn't mean it's 100, but can be up to 100.
The way that works is people with excellent credit their whole lives, and they have a late payment and isolated late, they're going to be, it's going to cost them 100. Someone that is a habitual late payer and is festering in the mid 600s, let's say, and is late occasionally, it's not a one-off, they're not going to be hit as badly because they do it often. So that late payment might only cost them 50 points, but they have late payments with other accounts, over and over and over again. So it's the people with excellent credit, great track record are the ones that are penalized the most.
That's interesting.
And the penalty is very, very severe for the crime.
Yeah, it is. It sure is.
I've always advocated, not that it got me very far, but if you demonstrate great payment behavior, you're a solid citizen, you pay attention to your bills, that you should be, be given at least one mulligan from each creditor, as forgiveness, because you didn't do it intentionally on many occasions. Maybe you were on vacation, maybe something came up and, you were not, just something came up, life happened.
Yeah.
And the second, largest component of your score is your, balances on your revolving accounts. So it's important to have credit cards, for example, but it's also very important to keep your utilization low.
Now, I've noticed, and correct me here a little bit, but I find it sometimes frustrating. I go back 4 months ago, my credit score was up over 800.
That's excellent. That's an excellent score.
Well, no, because then what happened is I have year-end expenses come up that I put on the credit card. And at the end of the year, each month I pay it off. But because of the timing, my credit score had actually dropped because of the utilization.
Yeah, sure.
It went from, I was at 805 down to 745.
Okay.
Just in that short period of time.
And within a 30-day, 60-day month period.
But I pay off the credit card every month.
Right.
So that's frustrating to me to see the fluctuation, even though I'm paying the credit card off. Don't they allow a little bit for that?
Well, effectively, Jim, it doesn't matter, because if you're not applying for any type of loan during that period and you see a fluctuation, you're going to get those points back once you pay the card off.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a psychological thing that, you're struggling with here.
That's probably what it is.
In reality, it doesn't.
We bring in the shrink later.
Yeah. But I understand your concern. But that's just the way it is. Once you, exceed a certain percentage on your credit utilization, and typically it's over 30%. If you're
it wasn't that much, but the point is that I was shocked on how much the droppage
affected
was.
You, right? Yeah.
And here I pay off the credit card every month, but it was the timing. So
it was the timing.
And It's
Sure.
just frustrating because they don't take into account that I pay off the credit card every month.
And just an FYI, a 745 credit score is
Still very good.
excellent.
Yeah.
You know, I would put you in
It
the
went back
excellent.
up to 755 right now, so we'll see.
Yeah, sure.
Do you follow this like you
I
follow
do.
the stock
Credit-
market? Oh, come on.
Credit Karma, man. I just pop on there every once in a while because they say your score
They're
something.
relentless. They are relentless. I have them
Your
too.
score has been affected, so
Yes.
I go to see what it is, make sure there's nothing fraudulent going on.
That's true.
Oh,
You
that's
should
true.
look at it.
And we're going to get into that
Yeah,
because I want to speak about that very
that's-
thing.
That happens quite often
Right,
too.
right.
People don't
Yeah.
realize. But let's go back to the utilization
Yeah.
for a moment. So
Yeah.
if you have a card
Right.
that has $5,000
Right.
line of credit
Mhm.
on it,
Yep.
I know that when you and I have spoken, you have said, for example, that if you're not using it, you should use it.
Correct.
At least have one payment on it.
One transaction
But to
minimum.
Jim's point, so if he was carrying half that on there, $2,500 balance, and at the end of the year, he put another $2,000 on it. Now he's bumping up against the $5,000 line of credit.
Is it like 80%, 85%?
He's over.
Right.
He's over. So that helps to contribute with the lowering of your credit score in that moment in time.
Yes. Right.
Now, if he pays it off, say he pays $3,000 of the $4,500 off, now the utilization's gone way low. Now his credit score should reflect that and increase.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But
But it
is
doesn't
you-
happen overnight.
It doesn't happen.
Is the
overnight.
utilization on one credit card 30%, or is it
Collectively.
the combination?
It's on each card, but they look at it collectively as well.
Okay.
So if you have 10 grand of available credit on 5 cards, so each card has a $2,000 limit, they want each individual card not to exceed 30% of the assess whatever the limit is, but they look at it as a whole.
collective.
As a whole, yeah. And some people have zero balances on certain cards and are maxed out
On
on
another one.
others,
That's
and
right.
thus their utilization
Is skewed.
overall isn't
Yeah.
terrible, but on that one card, it's at 100%, and that's not good.
Right.
Why is it not good besides your score dropping? There's 2 other reasons. One, it triggers an APR spike, which people don't know. So if you max out a credit card, it's in the fine print that nobody reads. It spikes your APR from whatever you have to the max allowable, which is about 30%.
In some cases, I've seen 32.99.
30, right. It's in the fine print
Yeah.
that nobody really reads.
That's right.
And in some instances, the creditors, Capital One, I'm not name dropping here, but Chase, Citi, they all do it, Home Depot, they allow you to go over the limit. Why? Because they charge you an over the limit fee, number one. Number two, they increase your APR, and that destroys your credit. So if you have a $5,000 limit and you go into Home Depot and you spend $5,500, your card will not be declined at point of sale. The transaction will go through. You're walking out of there with a $5,500 transaction with a $500 credit limit. Not only will your scores go way down and tank, but also your APR is going to spike to the max, and it doesn't recover from there. So once you pay it down, your APR doesn't go back down with it. Now you're stuck at that 30%.
That's nice.
And no one knows that the average person doesn't know it. And that's why our country is in like
debt.
1.4 trillion in credit card debt today for that reason.
So that's one of the bigger reasons you think is because
Absolutely.
of that. Okay.
Because they're not paying attention. They don't read the fine print.
So your APR can spike even though you pay off your credit card every month.
Yes.
Yeah, well, because they exceeded the
Because
limit.
they
Well,
went over the
that's-
limit the one time, that spiked the trigger in their system, and now they're at the top APR, and it doesn't go back down.
Wow.
I mean, you could petition the creditor and call them and say, listen, you do what's called a letter of explanation, why you had to use the card, emergency, maybe they'll work with you. But if you don't make that call, you're stuck.
All right, let me ask you a question to
Yeah.
take that to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
What if you pay that card off and then get rid of it?
Well, that's a good question, and a lot of people probably would do that in that
Mhm.
scenario.
Mhm.
It will hurt your credit ultimately because now you're destroying your credit history,
Okay.
which represents about 15% of your credit score. So if you had a card for 5 years or 10 years or a long period of time, I would never recommend getting rid of that card. But if you were in that scenario when you maxed it out and they increased the APR on you, now you're mad or pissed off, and you cancel the card, it's going to backfire because your scores are going to drop as a result.
So there's a lot of little nuances that you really need to be knowledgeable about in order to maintain a good credit score or increase it and prevent it from decreasing in your overall score. So to that point, how is the credit score calculated? There's a lot of factors that go into it, correct?
Well, there's basically 5, and we went over most of them, but I'll surmise them. So the biggest piece, about a third, is your payment history, how you pay your bills. You pay your bills on time every month, and there's only 4 things that should report: auto loans, mortgages, student loans, and credit cards. That's it. So as long as you're paying everything on time, chances are your scores are going to be good. The second biggest piece of your credit is your utilization, which we spoke about.
Right.
That represents about 30% of your overall credit score. So between those two, that's 65%, almost 2/3 of your credit score, just your payment history and how you use your credit card, your utilization, right? 15% of your credit score is your credit history, so you don't want to close accounts needlessly, like we just spoke about, because that will diminish your score somewhat. And the remaining 20% of your credit score is comprised of mix of credit. So they want to see, a lender wants to see that you have the ability to have at least 4 pieces of credit: 2 installment loans, which could be a mortgage, an auto loan, or a student loan. Those are called installment loans. And 2 revolving accounts, which are credit cards.
Okay.
So if you have 4 pieces of credit, you're pretty much in good shape. That represents about 10% of your score. And the remaining 10% of your score is new credit. So they want to see, investors, lenders, that you don't bite off more than you could chew. You're not applying and applying and applying, because that's going to create inquiries on your credit and it's going to diminish your credit score. So keep inquiries to a minimum. I mean, people, in my experience, would give me their social security number like they give me their phone number with no problem at all. But I find it's the people that are having difficulty getting finances that do that. People that have excellent scores their whole lives are more reluctant to give, me their social security number because they understand the importance of it and they're trying to protect it.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting phenomenon.
Okay, so you basically have covered what the most important components of the credit score are in your summary.
Right.
I guess, what is it that people should be doing? Like, for example, oftentimes you get these introductory rates. And so what is your feeling about people who may apply for that and then how they use it? Because, as you know, they give you these introductory rates, 0% financing for 12 months, 15 months, 18 months. And now you have a $10,000 line of credit, and people may take, like if they bumped up against or went over their line of credit with another credit card, it's not a bad tactic to have that transferred over. Now you're going to pay a fee for that too.
You're going to pay like a 3% fee. Yeah, right, for a balance transfer.
But are they disciplined, and do they remember that when the time runs out that they have to start making payments, or should they pay it off as they go along?
That's a great question. That's a tremendous question. I get asked it often.
First of all, by doing what he says, doesn't that hurt your inquiry issue?
Well, initially it will. It's an inquiry, but if you need appliances at PC Richards, or you need a car loan or whatever, well, that wouldn't apply. But if you need something from Home Depot, let's say, as long as you don't do it habitually, you're okay with that.
Okay.
If you really need something, you have to apply
and you're
for it.
buying something from it. Okay.
So on these cards that with a 0% APR, I've taken advantage of them several times. And I've gotten burned only once because I was asleep at the wheel. And this is many years ago. They give you 0% for 12 months, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you really need to do is figure out, and let's just say it's a $5,000 limit that you go to Home Depot, they give you $5,000. You buy appliances, and it comes to $5,000, and it's all 0% interest for the next 12 months. So now you have a $5,000 tab that you have to pay back, but the first 12 months is no interest, and all you have to pay is a $78 minimum payment. Don't get sucked into that,
right?
Because if you do that, you're not going to pay the $5,000 off in the 12 months.
Correct.
And in the 13th month, your interest is going to skyrocket probably to that 30% we spoke about. It's in the fine print. So they rope you in by giving you 0%, and they emphasize for 12 months, don't worry about it, but you have to worry about it. So what I tell my clients to do, and this is what I have done, is take that $5,000, divide it by 12, and that's my monthly payment to Home Depot for the next 12 months. And in the 13th month, the card's paid off. I get charged no interest, and I took advantage of that 0% offer.
It's perfect. Basically, you need to create a payment plan. I had to do this. I think I did it with a Discover card. It wasn't that much. It was like $4,000, but they had a 15-month introductory. So that's exactly what I did. I actually used 14 months just to give myself a cushion. Right. I divided 14 into it, and I just paid it online every month.
But they're not going to tell you that. Or they're going to, the sales guy, or, they're just going to say, hey, we have this special going on. You're going to qualify. You can walk out with all this stuff with no interest for the next 12 months.
Furniture stores are good for that.
Yeah, furniture stores.
Well, the furniture stores and the stores like the Macy's of the world, the Bloomingdale's,
yes,
they have the really high credit.
Yes.
The APR.
Yes.
Yeah.
The highest.
It's the highest, exactly.
Right. And they're hoping that you're asleep at the wheel, and you're just going to do the minimum thing, because eventually they're going to get you, and you're going to pay 4 times the amount that you should have paid if you created a payment plan.
Yeah. All to buy some clothes or some gifts.
Yeah. I know I got burnt by a furniture store going way back. I bought the furniture, 0 payment for 6 months. Mm-hmm. I was paying it off. And the last payment didn't take place. I got socked for interest for the whole thing.
Sure.
Oh, yes.
Sure.
And I had to pay the interest plus the last payment on that last payment.
And that's how they suck you in.
You
have to be super disciplined.
Yes.
And you really have to either ask questions or read the fine print.
Let me go back to the point I made about how I utilize the Discover card. I haven't used it for some time.
Okay.
So your recommendation is that I should, on occasion, use it because of the utilization. Please do.
So if you don't use a credit card like Discover that you've had for a while, Discover is going to look at your account periodically, because that's what they do. And if it's not active, meaning you're not using it, they might say, all right, James, maybe you don't need this card. And it's possible and likely that they will close the card because for lack of usage.
Yes.
And you don't want to run that risk, because again, that's going to affect your credit score, your debt, your utilization, all that kind of stuff. So they will close it on you for lack of use. I've seen it happen many, many times. So my recommendation to people with scenarios like that, when they have credit cards in their pocket and they just don't want to use them or need to use them, but they have them, tie it to a small recurring bill that you pay every month.
Like a gym membership.
Netflix, Easy Pass, something under $50. Set it and forget it. So if you tie it to that Netflix account, which is $14 or $19 a month, and you set it up on auto pay, there's activity on that card every month. So
there's a charge and there's a payment.
Right. And you're not paying a lick of interest because you have it ACH auto paid.
Yep.
And Discover, in your case, will already know your payment behavior because you're doing the same thing over and over and over. And they're going to reward you for that behavior. by increasing your credit limit periodically. And when they do that, your credit score is going to organically increase.
Okay.
So my advice to people that get these credit line increases, definitely take the increase, just don't take the bait. In other words, don't get into trouble. Stay disciplined. Keep doing what you're doing, even though you have a lot more available.
Well, it's really difficult too, because we're all enticed and seduced by all these rates and offers. And what happens is you wind up being debt enslaved if
Right.
you're not careful. So that's probably the hardest part, I think, that I've seen for people is being disciplined. And I think especially for even more so now for the younger generation, because we didn't really grow up with credit cards. It wasn't until much later when we began to work that we started to utilize a credit card. But I just see kids, parents are sending them off to college and giving them a credit card. Now, it's the parents' credit card, more than likely, but nonetheless, they are now being indoctrinated into that system.
Right. When we grew up, there was a term, cash is king.
That's right.
You guys remember that term?
Of course.
And, my dad, God bless him, everything but a house, he paid cash for. Everything but a house. And if he didn't have the cash, he didn't purchase it. Because back then, in the 70s and even in the 80s, there was a heavy, influx of cash with merchants, the way that people were spending money. And it's completely reversed today.
That's
Everything is plastic. Everywhere you go, no one carries cash for whatever reason.
I still do.
A little bit,
Yeah,
right?
not as much,
Not as
but-
much, but you carry a
I
little
do,
bit,
yes.
which is smart, which I do as well, just to have some. But the whole landscape has changed on how people pay. Everything is an app or a
Everything's
swipe,
automatic. Exactly.
automatic.
So I actually have another question.
Sure.
Going back to the utilization of your
Yeah.
credit cards. If you have a credit card, James, the ideal scenario is what you're saying is attach a bill to it and pay it once a month. But what happens if you don't have like a bill to attach to it?
Not a bill. It could
Or
a
some
gym
sort
membership.
of charge.
What else did I say? Easy Pass.
Netflix.
Is
Any
there
streaming service.
I guess is there a negative time frame that hurts your credit with not utilizing a credit card?
Well, it won't necessarily hurt your credit, but you run the risk of it getting canceled.
Okay.
That's the only, it's not a detriment, but it can get canceled on you.
How often do you have to use it so it doesn't get
I
canceled?
would at least use it once a quarter. So once every 3 months. And if you don't have any of those things I mentioned, use it for gas.
That would be the next thing. Just
Right.
carry it and occasionally use it for
Use it for your gas card. When you go to the pump, fill
or
it
maybe
up.
when you go on vacation, you're using it so
Right.
that
Right.
there's some utilization.
But the whole thing I discuss with first-time home buyers, because, as you guys know, I also do mortgages, and I have like a list of do's and don'ts to my home buyers. And, the ones that are struggling with credit and have, always maxed out and relied on credit cards to get them by, which is a death sentence in itself. Once I educate them, I try to incorporate this, way of using the cards by tying it to something small and just not even taking it out of their wallet. So they're benefiting from the activity, but they're not being penalized for the utilization, the overusage, and the high interest rates. Again, the interest rates are prohibitively expensive. It's not sustainable. So if you owe 10 grand, this is a fact. If you owe 10 grand at 30% and you're making only the minimum payment, I think I read somewhere it would take you like 45 years, something insane to pay it off, just $10,000.
because the interest keeps going.
Yeah, you're on a treadmill.
That's right. All right. So how can an individual check their credit score? Because there are 3 different credit
Scores,
agents,
right? I mean, agencies, yes.
right.
Yep.
And
I
does
call them
each-
credit bureaus?
Does each credit bureau look or does affect different things? Like I was told at one time that the auto will look at this credit versus the home looking at another credit score.
Right.
Right.
So to answer your question, every consumer is eligible to get a free credit report once a year by logging into annualcreditreport.com. It's a soft inquiry, meaning it will not affect your credit. It's not it's not like a hard inquiry. You're not applying. It's not tied to an application.
Right.
So it's just for credit, for checking your credit for accuracy. Annualcreditreport.com. There are other sites as well. Most of them are going to be paid services. And with annualcredit.com, you get a copy of your Experian, your TransUnion, and your Equifax report for free. And I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
His question really, I think, revolved, correct me if I'm wrong, is there differences within each bureau? And why does, a car, when you go to purchase a car at the dealership, do they use one over the other two?
Well, I can't really speak to auto, dealerships because I'm in a different industry, but from what I've seen in my own personal experiences, car dealerships typically use TransUnion. Don't know why exactly, but they typically use TransUnion. But all the data from from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion should be very similar, if not the same. Okay. In the mortgage industry, when you're applying for a mortgage, we run all three credit bureaus, and what we do as lenders, and every lender does this. They take the average, or they take the middle credit score.
One, right?
So it's not an average of the three; it's the middle.
Yeah. So you drop the high one and the low.
So if your high score with Experian is a 760, your middle's a 720 with Equifax, and your low is a 680 with TransUnion, you're gonna be qualified based on your middle score, and that's how the most lenders will determine, what your rate's going to be.
Okay.
In qualifying.
So that's important. Now, a couple of things. So if a person does have a bad credit score, there are ways in which to improve it, because you and I have already done that for people. You make that so what are the steps or the mechanics that you could explain to us to go through that? Because there are a couple different things that need to be done, right?
Yeah. So you're talking about somebody with a bad credit score or somebody with no credit score?
A bad credit score. If they're in the mid 600s or lower, or even 500s, upper 500s,
right, which I see a lot of.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And they want to either buy a home or a car, and they can't.
They can't, right? Well, the short answer is they have to reprogram their brain, and they have to do things differently. It's kind of like if you want to lose weight, you have to eat different foods and have a different, regimen, exercise regimen. Hold yourself accountable. Same thing with this. You have to reprogram your brain, and what you're doing isn't working. So instead of, not checking your score frequently or paying attention to your accounts, you need to know what's on your credit report. And I recommend that everybody do ACH. So your minimum payments being taken out on time, your car loan's taken out on time. If you have a mortgage, that's taken out on time. So you won't incur any more late payments. Number two, pay down, your credit cards. Again, that's a big dagger today. A lot of people are just maxed out on credit cards. Their utilization is through the roof, and that's, eroding and diminishing their credit score. So if they can get ahead of that, pay that down, keep your, make all your payments on time, you're on the way to having better credit.
Okay. To that point, now people have multiple cards. Say they have 4 or 5 cards and they're close to maxed out or maxed out. Oftentimes, most people fall into I won't say it's a trap, but is it the ideal approach? I feel rather than what most people would typically do is they would pay off the loan that has the highest interest attached to it because they're paying a lot of interest.
Correct.
That's logical.
Yeah, it's logical, right?
However, that may not be the best approach. A better approach may be take the card with the lowest balance, pay
that
it off,
first.
and then apply it to the next one, and so on. Because now you're accomplishing something, and you're getting rid of the debt that you have outstanding. But each of those payments that you've been making, now you're still making them, but you just begin to apply them, and you're making progress.
Correct.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, and that's what I recommend to my borrowers if they have multiple cards, and they want to. They don't know where to start or where to apply the money. I always say start with the lowest amount.
Mm-hmm.
Try to pay that off to next to nothing, zero if possible. Just keep it there. And then when you have a little bit more money saved, then you apply that payment to the next card and so on and so on.
Okay.
Eventually, you'll accomplish your goal.
And that also creates discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said before, it gives them a sense of achievement.
Yes.
That they accomplished this.
Yes.
And you're helping them to improve their credit score, whereby now they're less of a risk, so that when they do need to go buy a car or to apply for a mortgage, they're going to be better off.
Yeah, they have a better chance of getting approved and having a lower rate and lower fees.
Okay, so I guess another question is, what if you don't have credit?
That comes across my lap oftentimes. I recently had, I'm going to say a guy in his 60s, so he's not that old, with no credit. It said NA, which is not applicable. And he literally had no trade lines. He was one of those old school kind of guys that just paid cash his entire life for everything. Never owned a home before, never owned, always rented, but now he's entertaining owning a home. And I ran his report and there was no scores. And I can't do a mortgage for somebody with no credit scores. You have to show an underwriter that you have some history. So there's a couple ways of doing that.
And
the easiest way.
Before you even go there, though, how unusual is that in today's society?
It's very unusual. Yeah. Most people, I don't know the percentage, but I very rarely come across that. Maybe, 1% of the time, 2% of the time. Yeah. So it's very uncommon. The way to establish credit quickly, there's a couple of things you could do. You could do what's called alternative credit lines or trade lines. Public service, JCP&L, your water bill. Even if you're renting, some management companies will help you put your rental, your payment history for your rental, your rental on your credit report. There's an app called Experian Boost. I don't know if you've heard of that. Yes. Many people have. And that's so you can actually take alternative forms of credit, like your utility bills, and have them added to your credit report, which will populate credit scores.
So that builds a credit score.
Yeah, because it shows that you're paying your gas bill on time, your electric on time, your water on time, your cable. Now, if you default on any of those, they will come off your credit report. So
It's always two sides to the coin.
Always two sides. They're not going to reward you for bad behavior. Mm-hmm. Another thing you could do is become an authorized user, which is very common today. So if a family member or friend has a credit card or a couple credit cards that they've had for a long time, like American Express, that they've had for 15, 20 years, mm-hmm. and it has a very low utilization, you can add that person with no credit to that account. They never get access to the actual card. They're just getting access to the history of the card. So the card's history will report on, this individual with no credit report, and will populate credit scores. It's not the only thing they could do, but it's another thing they could do.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's the history that they're
looking for.
They're looking for, right. So they don't get access, and there's no exposure on the person that actually owns the card, because the individual that they're authorizing never has access. So there's no exposure.
Interesting.
I've helped my children personally with my own credit cards when they were in college, just starting out in life. I put them on my Cap Ones, And, it just showed up on their credit, gave them scores. And eventually, once they got their own stuff, I took them off because they didn't need it anymore. But that's, was a good way.
But that can work on the opposite side too if the parent doesn't pay off that credit card
right.
too,
So
correct?
there's exposure on the person that is, using that as authorized because, if I default in that example with my kids, it's going to show up on my kid's credit report, which isn't good.
No.
Right.
Jim, do you have a question?
No, actually, I found this quite fascinating because I've always wondered why my scores fluctuated so much, and the utilization is what kicks me in the butt, just temporarily, obviously, but it.
No, you were high risk.
I know, right? But it's just fascinating how much it fluctuates because it could go theoretically 50 points in a swing.
Yeah, it could. It absolutely could. But again, it's a temporary hit to your credit.
No, I know.
It's not a derogatory. It's not a blemish. That is something that is hard to, recover from.
Right.
I don't know how much time.
We're still good.
Okay.
So to that point,
I
you
want to bring up.
Yeah, you and I have done this some time ago for someone who had really bad credit, and one of the things that you helped them to do was really more or less go on a letter writing campaign to dispute and the blemishes and derogatory reports that they got. So maybe you could explain a little bit about the mechanics of that and how that might work and in fact help, but there's a little bit more, that takes a little bit more time and effort, correct?
Right. Yes, that is correct. So here are the facts. 79% of all people have inaccurate information on their credit report. That's a fact.
That's 8 out of 10.
That's almost 8 out of 10. And it could be something as like just a former place of employment that's inaccurate, a former address that's not associated with them, or something more blatant like an account that they never opened and they're victimized by identity theft. Which, in 2024, I think the FTC reported 1 million Americans that reported that their identity was stolen. And when your identity is stolen, it's going to destroy your credit unless you have some kind of monitoring service. So all that said, what we do is we identify someone's credit report with blemishes, late payments, collection activity, charge-offs, things of that nature. And we write letters to the 3 credit agencies. And what we're doing, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, and what we're doing is we're establishing a law. We're leveraging a law, which is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And that law basically says that any consumer can dispute or challenge anything on their credit report that they feel is inaccurate. So... and there's, like I said, 8 out of 10 people have inaccuracies. So by disputing that information and challenging it, the law states that the credit bureaus have only 30 days to contact the creditor and then respond to the client and prove that the allegation is correct. They have to verify that if, the credit report is saying that the client had a 30-day late on his mortgage, the credit bureaus then have to contact the lender, whoever the lender is. They have to send proof back to the bureaus. The bureaus send it back to the client. That all has to be done in 30 days, and it never does.
Okay, so what happens if it doesn't?
Then we elevate it, and basically we start in the initial phase of a lawsuit for FCRA violations because it clearly stipulates that, if there's an inaccuracy on your credit report, you have the ability to challenge it and dispute it. And if it's not proven to be accurate with supporting documentation, they can't just say, we verified it. They have to send us proof.
Okay.
Proof. And if that proof isn't documented in that 30-day window, then they're in violation of that law. And then they're compelled, meaning the credit bureaus, to delete that information from the consumer's credit report.
So it's really to your advantage
that they don't respond.
They don't respond, but I wasn't even before that we should periodically do this to do basically an audit of your own credit.
Sure, absolutely.
And just double check to make sure. And more than likely what you're telling us based on statistics, is that there's going to be some information that's inaccurate.
Absolutely. Again, it's a staggering statistic, and it's just getting worse by the day because everyone's doing their business and their banking and their transactions online.
Yes.
So the chances of you getting scammed or you're having your identity compromised in any way is, high right now. So you have to either monitor your credit on a regular basis through an app or a service that you could spend money on. I have been doing that for 15 years with my personal credit. Or the only other way to make sure that your credit is bulletproof is to close your credit reports or lock them. Freeze them is the term. Freeze them with the 3 credit agencies.
So that no one is accessing or inquiring at all.
You're shut down. You're locked down.
Now,
So
what's the benefit of doing that, though?
Just it's a
you're
mindset.
protecting?
You're protecting yourself.
Okay.
But I don't recommend that because chances are you're going to forget that you did it. 6 months or a year later, you want to buy a house or you want to get a car. And you go into a dealership and they're like, "Excuse me, sir, we can't run your credit. It's frozen." Now you have to call the bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, to unfreeze it. And that in itself isn't, could be an arduous process because you need a PIN number to remember. It's not 1, 2, 3.
I was going to say that's not automatic, right?
It's not automatic.
Yep.
But some people go to that extent to freeze or lock their credit if they don't want to pay for a third-party service to monitor it.
All right. So third-party service monitoring. Which ones do you suggest or recommend?
Well, there's only 2 that I recommend. One is called ID Shield.
Okay.
And the other one is LifeLock. And LifeLock is like a household name. They advertise. They're great. And they do everything. I mean, both companies do everything. They monitor, your bank accounts. They monitor, your personal information, your social security number, or your credit cards, your debit cards.
So this ID Shield, which you recommended to me many years ago, and I still have, I treat that as an insurance policy.
Right. Right.
So it's just another form of insurance. No, it's a couple hundred. I don't even think it's a couple $100.
It's about, I think, $20 a month or $15 to $20 a month.
I pay annually. It's like $150 or whatever it is.
Right.
It's not a lot.
But it gives you the ability to also monitor your credit where you can do a soft credit check. It tells you your credit scores.
Okay.
And it will also alert you. So let's say, Jim, I have your social security number, your date of birth, and your address. I have all your info, and I'm at home on my computer. And I'm at Home Depot's website. And I want to get a card. I want to get a card in your name without your knowledge. And I get approved. If you have ID Shield, when I hit that submit button, you're going to get a text message in real time from ID Shield. And it's going to say, "Jim, there's a pending inquiry at Home Depot or from Home Depot. Did you authorize it?" And you hit no on your smartphone because you didn't, and they will stop the transaction dead in its tracks. So you're not compromised in any way. And then they try to go after the perpetrator, but they never find these guys. But that's the benefit of having some kind of service. It's like a tracking device. It's always, and it tracks your emails. It protects your emails. Basically, everything to do with your, whole financial makeup is
Which one
protected.
do you like better for yourselves?
I have ID Shield.
Shield.
But they're very similar.
Yeah.
And thank God nothing has fallen through the cracks for me personally, but I've had those responses. Someone tried a couple years ago to open a Capital One account, and I already have a Capital One account, but they tried anyway, and I got an alert, and I investigated it. I said no right away, and then I did some more investigation. It was somebody that had access to my information. And if I didn't have an
ID Shield,
they would have been able to open it. And what happens is now they have the account opened. Now they buy something. I still don't know what's going on. I'm not going to know for maybe 60 days later until it goes through a cycle of reporting. Eventually, if I pull my credit or somebody pulls my credit for me, I'm going to see that my credit score tanked. I'm also going to see this account that I never opened that has been opened by someone. It happens more than you would think. That's why these things are so important.
I see phishing emails all the time.
Correct. Yeah. There's a ton of those.
Right.
Spam.
Yep.
IRS, remember the IRS emails that people were getting? They were
Yep.
targeting senior citizens.
And people were giving information.
And
that's what they used to open these types of accounts.
Right. I agree. Yes.
Okay. So these monitoring systems really valuable is the bottom line.
100%.
And everybody should do it.
Yeah. Everybody should do it. I mean, if you care about your credit, and you should.
Yeah, it's inexpensive. As I said, I view it as an insurance policy.
It is an insurance policy. To be honest, it's like legal insurance or credit insurance, right?
I mean, if you have a car, you have to have auto insurance, correct?
Correct.
If you own a home, you have homeowner's insurance. I won't say because if you rent that you have to have tenant insurance, but
you
it's
should.
probably
Should
advisable.
for your contents, right?
So this shouldn't be any different, is my point.
Right. And what's good about ID Shield, I don't know about LifeLock, I can't speak for them, but for ID Shield, once your premium is set, it never goes up. So, unlike auto insurance or health insurance or other types of insurance, every year your premium goes up, whether you put in a claim or not. It just is what it is. With ID Shield, if you pay $20 a month or whatever it is, that's your premium basically for life. No matter how many times you use it, no matter how many times, you potentially become a victim, you call them, whatever. And they have different plans. They have a family plan, so you can even protect your kids. Even though, it's funny, people want to protect their kids today, even though if their kids are under 18 and they really don't have credit yet, they still want to protect them because, they have a social security number, and that social is what these thieves are looking for.
Right.
It could be an a juvenile kid, but he has a social, that he has a date of birth, and they can manipulate that into potentially getting a loan.
So we may not know it, but there are people out there, and maybe ourselves too, that we have one social security card, but there could be 2 or 3 different people on it.
Yes, 100%.
So,
100%.
All right.
I know our time's winding down.
Yes. So maybe we should focus on a couple of key points.
Sure.
That people should consider when looking at their credit scores, maintaining them, increasing them, and protecting them. So you agree with those? Okay.
Yes, all 3. Yeah, I would keep in front of it at all times. There's a lot of free apps out there like Credit Karma. It's not perfect, but it's an indicator.
Right.
It's not perfect because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'll just throw this in there. There's 2 types of credit scores. There's FICO, F-I-C-O, and there's Vantage. FICO is a report that's used by lenders, banks, financial institution, auto. A Vantage score is like a consumer score. It's higher. It's inflated. So oftentimes my clients will say, I just checked my credit score on Credit Karma and it says 720. And then I'll run it on my mortgage platform and it's a 680. So the real number is 680.
Gotcha.
So there are 2 types of systems out there. Vantage is more for just checking your credit, just to have an indicator.
Right.
But your real score is going to be a FICO report, FICO, and that is pulled by lenders for the most part.
What does that the acronym stand for?
Fair Isaac.
Credit organization?
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a while since I had said
I knew it was Isaac.
Yeah, Fair Isaac Credit Organization.
But most people just say FICO.
All right, FICO.
And we all talk in the acronyms, but it's also important to know what's behind them too. And I thought I would ask that. Okay. Jim, do you have any other questions that we should? This is eye-opening in many respects, and it will be for many of the people that listen to what we've discussed today. If there's anything else that you would want to emphasize, please take the next couple of minutes to do that.
Well, we went over
we went over quite a bit.
We really did. We went over a bunch of stuff. I'm just trying to see if I missed anything. Again, in summarizing, I'm just going to say if you're applying for a mortgage, let's say, because that's going to be your biggest purchase ever.
Right.
You definitely want to check your credit score prior to applying, maybe a month or two. You want to make sure that everything on there is what you think it will be or should be. You want to know what your score is because that's going to determine your interest rate that you're going to be charged when you get the mortgage approved. And if you see any blemishes on there, you want to address them immediately by either disputing them directly with the creditor or with the credit bureaus. You just want to, put yourself in the best possible position to get approved for financing because it's all about money. Your credit, a good credit score will save you a lot of money, especially in the long run, and a bad one will do the opposite, will cost you a lot of money in the long run.
Because if you want to go purchase a car or get a home,
you're going to pay
a higher interest rate.
Higher rate and higher fees.
Because you're more of a risk.
Mhm.
Higher rates and higher fees.
All right. So the bottom line is if someone pulls their credit and they find that they don't have good credit score and they're not quite sure how to correct it, they need to look you up at the credit pros.
Right. They need to give me a call. Right. And I'd be happy to, do a free, credit consultation and evaluation and identify the pain points. Just go through each trade line by line. And if there's things on there that we need to dispute and challenge, we will.
Yeah. And now I know how your process works because I've experienced it for other clients that have had issues. So it's not painful, could be time consuming.
Could be a little time consuming.
And a little effort.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's worthwhile.
Absolutely. Because, without it, you're going to be stuck in quicksand and nobody likes to be stuck in quicksand, right?
That's painful.
It's painful.
All right. Anyway, well, we want to thank you for coming in, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
This was enlightening.
I had a blast. I want to be back. I love it. This was a lot of fun.
We will certainly have you back because the other aspect of your career and your work is helping people to purchase a home.
Right, qualifying for a mortgage, which is, very challenging these days. Just, due to, three things: lack of inventory being number one, excessive home prices. It's ridiculous. And high interest rates.
Interest rates. Yeah.
So, we have the trifecta going right now, and it's challenging, but we'll get through it.
Well, as we always have in the past, but we will certainly have you back and talk about that. And we want to thank you again, Peter, for your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Enlightened Wealth Strategies. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and inspiring.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform to stay updated on new episodes.
Your financial journey doesn't end here. Connect with us online for even more resources and exclusive content.
Until next time, remember, financial enlightenment is just an enlightened wealth strategy away. Investment advice is offered through Bellpoint Asset Management, LLC, 500 Demont Ranch, Parkway Building 700, Unit 700, Reno, Nevada, 89521. Additional information about Bellpoint Asset Management is available on the SEC's website at www.advisorinfo.sec.gov. It is important to read our disclosures available at this link, www.bellpointasset.com disclosures. The information provided in this presentation is educational and limited to the dissemination of general information. This material is not intended to be a recommendation of any kind, investment, tax, or accounting advice. Does not constitute a solicitation to buy, sell, or hold a security or an investment strategy. Engage in any financial transaction and is not provided in a fiduciary capacity. The information provided does not take into account the specific objectives or circumstances of any particular investor or suggest any specific course of action. Investment decisions should be made based on an investor's objectives and circumstances and in consultation with his or her financial professionals. While the advisor uses reasonable efforts to obtain information from sources believed to be reliable, the advisor makes no representation that the information or opinions contained in this material are accurate, reliable, or complete. All information and opinions contained in this material are subject to change without notice. The views and opinions expressed are for informational and educational purposes only as of the date of the production or writing and may change without notice at any time based on numerous factors such as market or other conditions, legal and regulatory developments, additional risks and uncertainties, and may not come to pass. This material may contain forward-looking information that is not purely historical in nature. Securities offered through Fortune Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA and SIPC, Bellpoint Asset Management, LLC, and Fortune Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Investing involves risks. Principal losses possible.